Hello there my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make these Kisses Wire Macrame Bracelets. Now they're nice and delicate yet they still have a big impact and you can choose to add beads or not, so if you want to learn how to make it, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we'll need. So first of all I have some different gauges of regular round copper wire. This first gauge here is a 0.8mm, I'm going to use this as the holding wire. And then here I have a 0.5mm, so this is going to be my working wire and both of these two I've chosen in a silver colour. Now this blue wire here is a 0.6mm and this is going to be used to make the X's, and that's also why I've chosen a different colour to really make them stand out. And then if you want to add beads in, I've got these 4mm rounds here. Now these specific ones are some blue coated faceted hematite gemstone rounds. Of course you can use whatever you want to. And then at the end I've got my findings, so a lobster claw clasp and extended chain, and of course a few jump rings. So make sure to check out the description box below the video. There's going to be material list and links that might be useful. Otherwise, let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So then we're going to need some lengths of wire, and first of all I have a length to my 0.8mm here of about 35 centimeters. So this is going to be the holding wire. Then I have a length of my 0.5mm of about 1 meter and 60 centimeters, and this is going to be a working wire. And finally I got a length of my 0.6mm here of about 70 centimeters, which in my case is blue. So I'm then going to be working on my mini macrame board here. It has these notches all the way around, so it makes it nice and easy to work with. And I'm then just going to grab my length of 0.8mm here, so my holding wire, and I want to attach this first of all. So just leaving a bit of a length, maybe about 5 centimeters or so at the top. Place it into just the middle of this side, and then bend the wire towards the back, and then bring it all the way down. And in the exact opposite slot, also leave a short little tail there. I'm going to place the wire in, and again bend it against the back, and then that is my holding wire in place. I then grab my working wire, which is my 0.5mm length, and I put the two ends together because what I just want to do is find the midpoint, which is here. So I just kind of have this as a little loop, so I know this is the midpoint, and then back to my ends, and I just need to put one end underneath the holding wire and then bring the length through until we get down to the midpoint here, and that is now behind the holding wire. And now what I need to do is attach this, because obviously right now it's all loose. So because it's loose yet, I just kind of tend to hold my finger over the top of the midpoint there. And then we need to make a regular square knot. So I start with my left side, bring that over towards the right. Then the right one here goes over that and underneath, everything in the middle. Make sure to go underneath the holding wire and up through the loop on the other side, and then just pull these tight, and then that's the first half of our first square knot. Now I need to repeat the same but starting from the other side. So bring that over, the other one goes over that, underneath everything in the middle, and up through the loop here. And again, as you can see now I don't have to hold it in place because it's now attached and it's going to stay on that holding wire, and that's our first square knot. Now what I personally like to do is make one more square knot here before we get into the pattern, so we'll just have a little bit more spacing on the end. So just repeat the exact same, except obviously now it's already attached, so it's already easier to work with. So do the first half of a square knot, pull that nice and tight, and every time you also pull a knot tight, run the wire through your hands and fingers just to kind of smooth it out, and then make the other half of the square knot and then tighten that. And then it's time to grab our final length of wire here, in my case the blue one, and again I want to do the same principle, just find the middle. So put the two ends together so I know where that midpoint is, and Again, same principle as the other one. Get one of the ends, bring it underneath the holding wire, and then bring that midpoint all the way up. Now what we need to do here with this, we're not actually going to be doing any macrame, and this is just attaching it first of all, so kind of just make it almost a little loop there, just for now. It's going to just sit right there below our knots, and then after that I want to make sure it's kind of open out of the way, and then just grab my 2 working wires and continue making square knots. So first half, tighten that, and this is now gonna tighten up right underneath the wire that we just attached, so the blue wire here in my case, and basically gonna trap it in place, as you can see there. And then just to make the other half of this square knot, like this, and again tighten that. So this is now 1 full square knot after our blue wire is sticking out here at the front. Now I'm going to make 1 more, because I feel like that's a nice spacing to basically create our X's. It's going to be the right size. So 1 more full square knot in the exact same way. And there we go. And then we need to bring our blue wires into play and actually create the X on top of these 2 knots that we just made. So let's just separate the wires out here, and I'm gonna just start with one. Doesn't matter which one you start with, I just naturally tend to take my left one first, bring that down. Now it's coming from the left, and I'm gonna then bring it over towards the right, so crossing from left to right. And I'm then gonna straight away bring it back underneath the holding wire in the middle, and then I like to kind of hold on to it up where the wire is crossing over, and then bring it all the way up there and kind of push it up against just below the knots. So that's the first one. Then the other one here is coming from the right. I'm gonna grab that and then bring it over towards the left, so that is now crossing over the other one, and you can see that's what creates the X. And then straight away bring it underneath the holding wire, and again to hold that X in place, I'm going to put my finger on it and then push the wire here up against the bottom of the knots. And then I just have these 2 wires that I just, in my case the blue ones here, brought over and created the X with, coming straight out to the side, and just kind of try and push them down a bit to get them out of the way. You can also then use the slots on the side there to help hold them in place, and that's going to kind of help manage all the wires for you. And then to basically trap that X in place, I'm going to then take my 2 working wires, in my case the silver ones, and bring them down and over the 2 blue ones that we just used to create the X with. And then I'm literally going to just make another square knot to basically trap it in place and also really make that X stand out. Pull that nice and tight, and you can see it just separates that nicely. And do the other half. And pull that tight. And there we have our first X in place. Now this square knot that we just made basically creates the spacing between the X's as well. So if you just want them to be close to each other, then you just want to do this 1 knot and then start the next one. Obviously if you want to add in beads like I'm going to show you as well. Or if you want more space in between them, then for instance you would do 2 knots, or it's really up to you how many knots you'd want to do between them to create the spacing that you want between your X's. But if you want to add beads to your piece as well, I'm just going to show you that. So what I'm going to do is release the holding wire on the bottom here of my board, and then I'm just smoothing out the wire from that kink so we can actually get our beads onto it. And then I'm just going to use this end of our holding wire and basically start adding beads onto that. You can also do it right from the beginning, that's up to you. And then when you've added all the beads you need, you can just reattach it in that bottom slot and bring the wire around back again. And then here on the board I have my beads, but what I'm going to do is just push them all the way down to the bottom here, just so they're out of the way, and I have this whole area that's free to work with. But then to add your bead in, all I'm going to do is, after my knot here that I made with my working cords, I'm going to push up 1 bead. Obviously, like I said, it's up to you how much spacing you want between. Push up a bead, and then I'm literally just going to make a square knot below the bead here, and then tighten that, and that's basically going to cage the bead in. And the other half of it. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then again I have a bead below, or sorry, a knot below the bead, and you can leave it at this and then do the next X, or however you want to kind of make your pattern. Is completely up to you. But then we just need to continue basically. And I'm going to do that by making an X after this bead. So I'm going to be alternating between X bead, X bead. And like I said, it's completely up to you how you want to do your pattern. But then just to show you, to make an X again, because obviously this time we don't need to add the wire. That's what we did in the very first one. Now I'm literally just going to be using the wire where it is. So I'm going to just take my blue, in my case here, wire, and bring them down and bring them underneath the working wires, so my silver ones, and just straight down here, and then just for 1 at a time. Then below this knot, the bottom one, I'm gonna push my wire up below it and have it kind of come out towards the front, and the same with the other one. And otherwise behind, on the back side here, the wires are kind of just running down behind the bead as well and behind the other knots. But then this one, push it up against the bottom of this knot here, so they're sitting as close to the knot as possible and also as close to each other there. Now after that, to kind of cage them in place, and if you recognize, this is kind of the same place now where we started out when we attached the blue wire, where the wires were kind of sticking out towards the front here. And that's basically the position we're in now, except we didn't have to attach the wire. It was already attached. But then I'm just going to do another square knot, nice and tight, to cage these wires in place, you could say. But then also, oops, leave that bead out of it, a bit too early. Create the knots now that are going to be below the next X. And if you remember, I did 2 knots below an X, so that's 1. I'm just going to do 1 more. To create the proper spacing. And obviously also so they're all consistent with each other. First half, and do the other half here. And tighten that. So I've got my 2 knots ready now. And then before we do anything else, we need to bring our blue wires down here. I again start with my left one. It's just personal preference, and I like just starting with the same side every time so it's nice and consistent. But I just bring my left one down and over towards the right, and then straight away underneath the holding wire. and then push it up against the bottom of the knot there, and then just straight out to the side, and then the right one comes down and over towards the left, and that crosses over the other one to create that X, and then straight back underneath the holding wire and push it up to have as little bulk as possible, and to then kind of set all that in place. Below these two blue wires, I'm now just going to do another square knot with my working wires, in my case here the silver ones, so it cages the X in place but also kind of separates it out. It makes it stand out more. And again, I'm just going to do one here because I'm going to have the spacing of one knot between each of my elements, you could say. So between the X's and the O's, or the beads, however you want to look at it. And there you go. So now we have an X, a bead and an X, and I'm just going to continue like that. So now I reached the other end here. I finished off with one square knot after my final X. What I then actually just want to do is, if you remember in the beginning, I made 2 square knots. So I just want to make another one here to achieve 2 as well. So it's the same. Because obviously I'm not creating space in between anything now. This is just going to be the end. Do the other half. And then my full length is done. So then I can remove it from my board, and we just need to get rid of the ends of the working wires, and also in my case here the blue wires that created the excess. So I'm just going to start with them. Now obviously we're working with the ends that are coming out from that very last X, and if you then can see, we have a little bit of a gap right at the end of the X there where the wires are coming out on the back. So what I'm going to do is take one of them. This is the one coming from the bottom with how we're holding it, so from down there. I'm then going to take the end of the wire, come from behind because it's going out towards the back, and then come up through the gap on the other side of the holding wire, and then just feed that all the way through. Bring it through there to basically wrap around the holding wire, but within the knots here, you could say. And then again just go down the other side, which is where it was coming out originally from the X, and make sure it's nice and tight around. As you can see there, that's just a little bit loose, so it can be a little bit hard to sometimes get a proper grip with your fingers, so you can use pliers and grab onto the wire just to help pull it tighter, to get it really nice and tight around that holding wire. And then I basically just want to do the same with the other one. Remember, that's coming from, in this case here, kind of the top when we're looking at it. So just bring it from the back here through the gap on the opposite side of the holding wire. And again, I like to hold my fingers, or a finger there, on the X just to help hold the wires in place in the right position, and then just pull it through. And again, if you need help pulling it a bit tight, you can use some pliers and grab onto the wire better. And then otherwise, down the other side, just again wrap around that holding wire and just pull that nice and tight. And then let's move to the back, because that's where the wires are coming out from now. And I'm just going to kind of bring them towards the opposite side, but not go through the gap again. And then I'm going to take my flush cutters, cut off the excess, but just leaving a short little tail there on the back that you can then feel is sticking out. So cut both of the ends off, and then just make sure to flatten them down, and basically should be able to then get the ends tucked into almost the knot there in between all the other wires, to avoid them sticking out on the back and obviously being uncomfortable against your skin. So that's now gotten rid of those, and it's nice and secure because obviously it is wire that we're working with. Now that's those, and basically the two working wires here, it's the same principle, but these two are just coming out from that very last knot that we made. Now you'll find one is kind of coming out towards the front and one is kind of towards the back. This one here is the one towards the back. So I'm just going to kind of rotate my bracelet, and that basically makes it so that wraps around that holding wire. And then I'm going to do the same with the other one. And then I want to just take, again, one at a time and bring it through the gap on the other side. So this is within the knot. And that just wraps it around that holding wire even more so. Same with the other one. So basically these little wraps that we're doing is just going to help secure it more in place. So we can safely cut off the ends and not worry about anything coming undone. So there we go. Same principle then, take flush cutters, cut off the excess, but leaving a short little tail there. You can feel it if you run your fingers over it. Just going to cut off the other one as well. Like that. And then don't forget to flatten them down and kind of tuck them into the middle of the knot there. And that is now finished off the ends nicely and securely. Now you can then choose to use the wire here from the holding wire running through the whole bracelet to make a clasp with, so it will be incorporated into the bracelet, or you can choose to just make some loops and then attach a separate clasp, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to place my tweezers and nose pliers there, a little bit above the final knot, and then put a bend into it, about 90 degrees or so. Then I'm then taking my 6-step bell making pliers. You can use round nose pliers, I'm just using the smallest step. Place that on the angle, bring the wire all the way around so we end up with a full circle. And then just to kind of secure that in place, we need to grab onto the wire there, the circle with my pliers, and then I use the tail, and basically we need to wrap around the gap that we left before the bend until we run into the knot and we haven't got any more space. Then flip it to the back, cut off the excess. And then just remember to just squeeze down the end there, so there's nothing sticking out that can catch or scratch on either clothes or skin. So you can just repeat that on the other end as well. And you can then attach a clasp to the loops here, and then we just need to shape the bracelet. So you can either shape it around something that has the size and shape you want it to have, or you can just use your hands and fingers. So go in and start putting a gentle curve into it, obviously with the front facing outward and the back inward. And then just go back and forth and put more and more of a curve. So don't just go into one place and put a bend into it, that will put it out of shape. But put a curve into it here and gradually get the ends closer and closer together, so obviously we can use the clasp. And then your bracelet is done and ready to wear. So of course you can very much customize this to fit your own style, both in the colors that you choose, but also whether you choose to use beads or not. Now if you want to see more wire macrame tutorials, I have loads on my channel, so feel free to check that out. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.